They thought they had banished us forever. But now, finally, we have returned.
Welcome back to another Writer's Showcase, everybody. I'm very happy to be here with you guys today. I'm intrigued to see what latest marvels our writing crew has to show us this week. Anyway, allow me to bring in my wonderful guests, starting with the always sagacious Commissar Carl.
Наш Советский Союз покоряет весь мир.
And welcome, Oxula One.
Let's take a moment and break the ice. So the intentions are known. See, I have pity in watching you suffer.
Yo, let's go.
All right.
Very, very nice. I'm excited. This is going to be fun. The first one, so I will find something in my deep collection. This one. I don't even know if he's a dude.
You inherit too much power. You have proven you can rule yourself. Now you must learn to rule others.
Nice.
I just got back from that movie a few nights ago. It was an experience.
I'm still. I need to cram my way through that book in the next 3 days. Because otherwise, I'm not going to be able to get that book again for a few months, and I want to watch that movie with a friend.
Oh boy. Well, if it's any consolation, the book, it's about 2/3 of the book that is covered in the movie. They split it up into 2 parts, as has become the fashion in this day and age with long books.
It's kind of died for a long time. I think the last one to do this was actually Hunger Games, and that was like 4 years ago.
Oh yeah, that trend stopped real quick. The splitting of the last book into 2 movies, you mean?
No, that was the last one to do it.
Yeah.
It was a trend for a while, from starting with like Twilight and stuff.
No, it was Harry. I think it was Harry Potter that started it.
Oh, okay, yeah, Harry Potter. Harry Potter, and then Twilight, and then the last one to do it. I think like this is the first in a very long time to do this.
Oh, and then The Hobbit took it up to 3
level. Yeah.
Oh yeah.
Huh. Yeah. But at least The Hobbit's the best out of that group. Since most of the others are kind of not that interesting. Okay. Wonderful. So, does anybody have any time constraints on?
Nope.
Okay.
I'm wide open.
Aspiring?
I'm good.
All right. You sound really tired, mate. Almost more tired than me.
Well, you know when I was up, and I woke up like 2 hours ago and just.
Oh, I just barely woke up. So, after we stopped chatting.
That must have been horrible for you getting up. Says the guy who gets up at 3 o'clock in the morning regularly.
Well, here's the thing. I woke up around 1:30 and didn't get to sleep until 7.
All right. Okay. Enough belly aching about our sleep schedules.
Yeah,
Alright.
life's. All right, let's
So-
go clockwise from Carl, Lucia, the writer, then Ursula, and then I'll end.
Sounds
Actually, could I switch places with Axula? I have a few last-minute touches to put on this thing.
Okay,
Oof.
we can do
I'm,
counterclock.
I'm cutting it real close. I really shouldn't be doing this, but I got in the bind, and I'm eating this.
That's okay. We can do clockwise, or counterclockwise, I mean, and give you a little bit extra time. That work?
Thanks.
All right, Axula.
All
You have
right,
the
cool,
floor.
cool. Okay, I wasn't expecting to go first. Let's go. All right, recap. Quick recap. This is my second time being here, chapter 2. So, brand new introduction to a brand new story. Last week, presented Aleph 1, chapter 1 with, Nathan and Dan, brand new characters and trying on suits in a clothing store, and voices are talking to them. And then they walk throughout the town, doing their shopping and getting ready for the wedding. And then we introduce more of the world with citizens blended in with soldiers, and then the soldiers are checking, the skin, the arms, the eyes, all the signs for what they're looking for. And let's see, how did it end? Yeah, it ended with uh, Dan talking to Nathan, saying, "Don't let them have an audience. Don't talk to the voices." And he agrees. And then it ends with he gives no reply. So now we're on to chapter 2. Let's go. Okay. Bat 2. Booming like a thunderous roar, the large man's even larger voice barrels the walls with vibrations of sound. Oh yeah, by the way, my bad. Quick disclaimer. If you can hear children yelling and screaming in the background, we got guests over at my house, so pretend that's part of the story. My sons, have you returned with your decision? A large projecting man with long white dreadlocks and a long white beard holds out dark, experienced, muscular arms in embracing delight. Yes, Abba. Nathan closes the door and embraces his father's arms. You don't know how excited I truly am. Nathan grabs tightly and his father hugs him back. Dan and Nathan now stand in Nathan's home, ready to help prepare for the wedding. Dan bows down as Urim and Nathan let go. Thank you, Mr. Urim. It is an honor to be called your son. Urim, Nathan's father, laughs deeply in his rich projecting voice. Ha ha ha! Oh, young Dan, not even my third-born is as close to my boy as you are, he bellows out in laughter. Friends since childhood, survivors and overcomers. There is no one greater to take the honor of my son's best man. He opens his arms out for a hug, and Dan moves into the outstretched embrace. Nathan smiles. His best friend and best man is a brother to his father's eyes. This is fantastic. He looks around at the three families swarming his home. His mother, beautiful and elegant, with long, thick black hair braided and held by a wrap of cloth, smiles deeply at her son with loving brown eyes. She carries around supplies, and her hired servants quickly and willingly follow her. Voices of the other families laugh and converse in all rooms, shouts bouncing through the walls. The bride's parents greet Nathan and Dan as well, along with family members of both sides shouting and calling out in cheer. Outside of the home, animals in the barns and fields bellow in their respective calls in the farms surrounding it. Cattle, sheep, wheat, corn, tomatoes. A few miles of the property expands before the borders of the homes next to them. Properties with the same outlines of border and their own respective crops. I need to fix that. The grammar isn't the best. A man with a home benefiting the community. Urim's household and the ones around him are well known for supplying this isolated city with crops and goods. He is a popular man and well known to the soldiers in this small city. More hired servants attend to the many busy crops outside, as well as the tents and the booths being set up behind the house, the place for the wedding. It is very busy and a life-filled place, Urim's house. On this day of celebration, everyone involved prepares for the celebration. I need to fix that too. My bad, guys. I made some last-minute changes to this. Nathan scans the environment, the busy home. Speaking of them, where is Reuben and Eliah, Abba? Urim looks over at his son. His massive smile begins to drop slightly. I don't recall his last position, my son, but your brother, he said he was visiting the city. He shakes his head. The smile completely falls away, and a frown replaces it. You know your brother. He's most likely lurking around with that soldier again. Nathan understands. He sighs and frowns as well. Not again, Reuben. Why? Let him fight. He can save you all. Don't you care about your family? Remember the last time? He wants to protect you. He cares for you. Do you not? Do you not care for your family? You're so selfish, you and your father. Your brother only wants to protect you. Nathan recognizes the sudden intrusion of the whispers and winces slightly in aggravation. Even here in this very crowded home full of 3 lively families, the Rukim still shuffle through the air. Nathan realizes this as he slowly looks around. Many guests grab more glasses of wine and down them quickly. He sees as every now and then one of them twitches their heads. Others narrow their eyes in anger and look up to the sides in the middle of their conversations, as if a child or a fly is interrupting them, before snapping back to the people talking to them and smiling again. A child or insect nowhere to be seen. The person being conversed with never bringing up these sudden facial changes. Nathan sees most, if not many, with heavy faces trying to focus on the celebration at hand, while he himself feels the overwhelming weight of living things pressuring the air above their heads. Nathan knows, as well as everyone else, the Ruchim are active, and many Ruchim are here, right now. He doesn't say a word to them. His father shakes his head in shame before looking slowly around at his home full of life. His eyes dart suddenly to the side as if being startled by something. He quickly recomposes his posture and looks back at his son. Nathan's heart sinks a little bit. His father is hearing them too. I fear for your brother, Nathan. I truly do. When the time comes, speak to him. Warn him. A very sharp and stern look pierces from his experienced eyes into Nathan's. He raises his hand and taps his forehead with a single finger. Nathan swallows. The scar on his forehead itches a little bit. Urim nods. Nathan understands. His brother has been too ignorant to the world for long enough, embracing the war and culture of this militarized small city, of this isolated fort. Reuben does not know about the things it isolates itself against, the things outside. Nathan knows now. Reuben is old enough for the truth. It's time to tell him the details. Urim nods heavily, and a smile quickly returns to his face. He casts aside all doubts and lies from the Rukim whispering to his mind. He refocuses himself on his son, on the celebration instead. He smiles widely. Now as for Elia, I believe a sudden opening of a nearby door catches Urim's attention, and he stops himself. From within the other room, a group of women open a door, and they all head into the main living room. All dressed in gowns with beautiful and immaculate head coverings and scarves, they move together as one, laughing and smiling. Immediately one of them, her hair long, deep amber brown, and fastened in a purple head covering, wrapped in a long purple and white silk dress, cries out after seeing Nathan. Her eyes hazel and face radiant in natural beauty, she runs straight to the man whose smile is set on her. His arms are open wide. Nathan! Elia! She hugs Nathan as he lovingly hugs her back. The sisters who were with her begin to giggle and whisper amongst themselves. Urim laughs, bellowing loudly. He raises a nearby wine glass and shouts praises to above and praises to the family before him in his home. Nathan and Elia hold each other tight, and after many moments they let go, holding both hands. Nathan looks at her and she looks at him. Soon, my love, soon, Nathan declares. Elia smiles and instantly tears up. She leans in and hugs him again. Nathan closes his eyes as he holds her with care. I can't wait, she whispers to him. Dan smiles giddily nearby them as he stands with his own family. He looks and grabs a nearby wine glass and raises it up. To marriage! He screams for all. Urim laughs loudly and does the same thing. His vibrant voice shouts even louder than Dan's, and it rattles the halls and windows with booming power. To my son and his bride! All guests shout in unified cheers. Shouts fill the air. Scene change. You will never truly be safe. The front door opens and shoes shuffle in desert sand outside. The cheering and laughing quickly floods the air before the hinges close and the sounds are cut off by the wood. Nathan breathes in deeply and looks up with eyes closed as the sun shines down upon him. The quiet breeze gently blows in the wind, providing a meticulous blend of cool to balance the sun's heat. He walks forward. Soon Nathan's mother will call upon all guests to help set up for the final phases of the wedding, and every guest and servant will get to work. Until then, Nathan steps outside to think, to meditate. He walks up towards the hill. There in this desert place of the heartland, within this town of Fort Saltis, Urim's house sits rested on a hill with a single very old guardrail on the edge of it, facing the city from where Nathan and Dan came. Nathan walks up to the rail and leans on it with his arms. He takes a look within. A half small city, half military base, his home. He sees ahead the many watchtowers and the snipers who fill them outside the city itself. He sees the spotlights equipped on them, the malls and the shops, blended in with outposts and parking lots for military vehicles. He sees the trading district, the business district, the many segments, for many things of trade and life, schools, a theater, an army training grounds for new recruits. Nathan sees a city designed to mold together both civilians and soldiers alike, where they both serve one another. In the very center of the city, Nathan looks upon the massive army barracks, a military housing, larger than all buildings surrounding it, cushioned by the civilian buildings surrounding it. In the heart of this place and all things that go on here, Fort Saltis. The city ends and homes surround the outside of it, with many farms and plots of land stretching out for miles between them. From beyond those lies the walls, and beyond those lies the expanse of the heartland, the desert, the forests, the jungles. Here in this region, separated from the cities of the world and its many politics and issues, the people who live here choose to live here, with the military, protected, guarded, isolated. People like Nathan's father. Nathan listens to the air and sighs deeply. He hears them, the rattling of engines all around, intruding of the natural peace and of the birds and flocks. Around the barracks and the city surrounding it, and all around the homes surrounding it, loud truck engines rattle into the peaceful desert sky, as vehicles filled with soldier patrols move constantly, moving in formations throughout the fort. Like blood cells within a heart, soldiers flow throughout this place. They are its lifeline, they are its blood. Nathan turns and looks at the walls surrounding him, the walls enclosing this place, miles away, stretching on for many more miles. He sees them linked together at four corners, making a massive square formation that encloses the fort. On the walls themselves, large towers stand on each corner, as well as the ones in the centers. He looks at the nearest one and sees a flash of light. A soldier, most likely, looking through a sniper scope or binoculars, staring right at him. Nathan stares at it for a moment and turns away. The flare of light ceases and the soldier resumes whatever he or she was doing. Nathan turns around again and looks to the city. He thinks of beyond the walls, past the deserts and into the heartland. He knows from what he's seen that a single lonely road connects this entire place to a singular nearby train station. Aside from that, small dirt roads lead on for many miles into the expansive, endless deserts and forests, going to nearby civilizations far, far away. You will never truly be safe. Nathan leans down on his arms against the guardrail and closes his eyes. He sighs deeply. A thought? Or a thought not of a thought implanted in? He isn't quite sure. He sighs. You couldn't protect her. Your father is a fool. You all are. We are here. We are always here. You can never escape us. Nathan's heart sinks, but he keeps his face held. This is what it's like. This is life. These are the things that they say. These are the reasons why the guests drink additional glasses of wine. This is why the soldiers in this fortress exist. The Ruhim, the voices. Wood creaks as hinges turn a door. The noises of the inside home fill the air gradually and then immediately silence as the door slams shut, muffling it entirely. Shuffles of feet gently move forward, scratching the sand. The bride gently places her hands on her husband's shoulder. His head turns to her and he smiles. Nathan reaches for Elia's hand and closes his fingers around her own. The two look ahead. I'm excited to see what you and Dan chose for the wedding. Nathan turns and sees Elia's beautiful hazel eyes staring at him. Her smile is deep and contagious. Nathan smiles wide at the thought of her. You will love it, my dear. I'm also sure I will be gazing at beauty greater than the stars above when I see you tomorrow. Elia giggles and she wraps her hands around his arm. She rests her head on his shoulder, closing her eyes. The ladies helped me choose today, too. We had so much fun. For a few blissful moments, they both fall into perfect peace, almost forgetting about the invisible eyes floating all around them. The lips and tongues unseen that yet see and watch everything. How could you ever expect to have a successful marriage? What a joke. You are a joke. Nathan sighs. Elia does not react. He wonders what they might have told her exclusively. They speak to each person. Nathan knows this much. It pains him to think what horrible words they told his beloved. What horrible words they tell her regularly. Do you feel safe here, Ali? The bride looks up at her groom. His eyes are greatly saddened. She immediately knows they must have been telling him things, the voices. She waits a moment before she replies. Compared to before? Yes, my love. She holds his arm a little tighter and smiles. I feel safe here. Nathan smiles. He looks ahead and remembers an old house and city, the place all three of them, him, Dan, and Elia, all came from. Survivors, friends, a place not as protected and military strict as this one, not as isolated, a place that was vulnerable. He remembers the attack and the destruction that they left behind, the ones who murdered so many people to satisfy the beasts that drive them, the ones who robbed him and robbed each of their families, the slain. He feels a sting from the scar on his forehead. He feels an itch as his hairs begin to stand. A camera notices. You should have saved her. You failed. The breeze gently blows on Nathan as the breeze gently blows and Nathan swallows for many thoughts. This new habit is a tough one, but Dan is right. Do not reply to them. This place is the best security Abba could afford, Nathan says to Elia, to protect ourselves and our future families from them. Nathan looks around for the invisible ones and sees nothing. He turns and looks into Elia's eyes instead. Do you reckon we can raise a family like this, in this world, Ali? She looks into his own, loving. Nathan turns and looks at the city again. Reuben was born here. He wasn't there for the attack that day. He doesn't know what burning flesh smells like. He chokes slightly and clears his throat. He doesn't know what the slain can do, what the Ruhim can do. Nathan breathes very raspily. Elia holds his hand and comforts him as he continues. Now Reuben wants to be like those soldiers, like the ones who constantly check us and ransack our homes. Soldiers who beat old men because they feel like it, because they can. He shakes his head slowly. Temper starts to arise within him from the memory of earlier. He turns his eyes sorrowfully towards his bride. Is violence truly inevitable for our own children, Ali? She now understands. Her precious one is fully opening up. You will never be safe. Your offspring will never be safe. Nathan ignores it. He waits for Elia, his beloved, not liars. The bride waits a few moments and chooses to reply carefully. She thinks about the weight of all of this and what Nathan must be going through. You will be a magnificent father, my love. I know you will. Nathan smiles and closes his eyes. He loves Elia's optimism. That's one of his favorite things about her. He looks at her as she continues. I struggle with the voices too, my love. We all do. But we can push through it. Don't listen to their lies. I know you will be amazing. There is nothing they can ever do to stop you, to stop us. She holds his hand with hers. I love you, Nathan. We can overcome this together. We can overcome any Ruhim, any slain, you and me, together. Nathan's heart soars with emotions. His eyes water and he reaches out to hug her. She falls into him. They hold each other tight. The radiant, loving emotions agitate the Ruhim above them. as the emotions stab them in their own realm of existence. They both can feel the teeth around them seething and clanging with anger. Some flee and run away, some remain, determined to break through these two, to cause a divide, somehow. Nathan and Aliyah embrace. I love you more than words can say, Ali. Tears flow from Nathan's closed eyes. You were there for me in our darkest moments. You have been my greatest help, my refuge. You have always been there. It is my greatest delight to marry you. Aliyah flows with tears and holds him tighter. For many moments they hold each other firmly. For many moments they share this bond. When they eventually let go and look into each other again, Nathan sees Aliyah is smiling wide. Feel that? Aliyah says as they slowly let go. She looks around at the air surrounding them. I think we killed a few. Nathan laughs and his heart soars a little. He noticed it too. In those moments, many watching Rukim fled. They both felt the air shift. They both felt a lightness in the breeze. One of the things Rukim hate to see. Love. I think your beautiful presence alone is enough to murder them by legions of tens of thousands, my dear. Nathan raises his other hand in victory as if holding up a sword. He smiles at his bride as he makes an imitated victory cry. They both laugh and hug each other. They both resume to silence as the laughter fades into smiles. Never fear the voices, my love. She speaks into his arms. Fear nothing. Nathan's smile slowly turns to a frown as his mind flashes horrifying images in his head again. His forehead itches. His smile fades as his mind cruelly reminds him. The voices are not the ones that scare me, my dear. He takes a long breath as Aliyah's eyes open and she backs up a little. They both look at each other and her eyes meet his. They look haunted. It's the ones who listen. Silence. The wind blows quietly as the few remaining unseen eyes watch in silence, floating all around them. Floating all around the two. Aliyah waits for many moments as she says the words on both of their minds. The slain. Nathan swallows. He slowly nods. He runs his hand through his hair and holds it over his mouth. Though they both survived the first time, Nathan's mind still replays the scene like it happened only minutes ago, haunting him, never letting him go. A cruel replaying triggered by a traumatized brain. I wish I'd never seen what humans can do when they work with the Rukim. He stares at nothing. Aliyah notices his other hand turning slightly white from clutching the rails. Aliyah reaches gently and holds the top of it. You did everything you could, my love, she whispers. It's not your fault. Nathan swallows and nods. He looks over at her. I never told you what fully happened, the details, did I? He points at the scar on his forehead. Aliyah shakes her head. She recognizes this opportunity. She knows from her parents, who are both licensed city therapists, what this is. A chance to be healed, to let it all out, to be free. Are you ready? Nathan swallows hard and looks ahead. He looks around and focuses his thinking. He then returns them to the ones of his love. I am. Aliyah rests her head on Nathan's shoulder. They both remain in silence for many moments as the voices try again to whisper to them both. They both ignore the sounds. They only focus on each other. I was only 7 years old. She was 13. Nathan thinks about the debris that landed on the top of his head. He looks at nothing as he prepares his emotions for the retelling. The voices murdered my sister. And that concludes chapter 2. Sorry for the stuttering. I'm still trying to get used to this.
Oh, no worries. We've all got our own bad habits we have to work through.
Yeah,
How was how did it go through? Did it go through good?
Yeah.
Any cutting out at all?
No, technically sound.
Excellent. All right. Yep,
That's
it.
the thing. Becca, you had a comment very early on about hired servants being redundant. I don't think so. I think it's a distinction between hired servants versus something like a family retainer. There is a distinction to be made there.
Slaves.
Yes, yeah, that it's a hint to this people group. I'm not really directly telling who they are. That's something that you can figure out slowly as you go through the story by the words they use, their names. They're a people group that have hired servants, kind of like butlers, and they're not slaves. They're hired people, right? But they serve the families who they work for. And because of the wedding, they have to have the help and the helping hands to set it up. So yeah.
Mm-hmm. Yes.
Thank you, Becca. She said, "Shut up, you read great." Thanks. I'm trying.
Yeah. Right.
Yeah, what'd you
No,
guys think?
my love is not utilized too much. They're at a wedding. It is used exactly the right amount, 3B.
Yeah, that's me trying to give each character their own voice and their own personality. And Alaya talks. I can't really imitate a female voice, but imagine a soft female voice going, "Yes, my love," kind of like that. That's how she talks. Her manner of speaking. Meanwhile, Urim is kind of like the dad. He's kind of like, "Ha ha ha! Yes, my son." Like, think of that. I don't know who to compare that to. Think maybe Armstrong from Full Metal Alchemist.
Brian Blessed. Mm-hmm.
Yeah,
That's my
any
go-to.
criticism, anything that you guys want to point out?
I don't have anything. Aspiring, did you notice anything?
Not particularly.
Done? What about you?
No, I think that was relatively interesting. I'm interested. I like the fact it's kind of interesting that you're utilizing the power of love as a trope, but it's utilizing it in a way that's not cringy like a lot of things that use that trope.
Oh, I'm glad you bring up trope because, yeah, that I'm not going to reveal what the Rukim are just yet, but as you guys can tell by how they talk and what they're trying to do, they don't like humans. And they don't like seeing humans thrive. They don't like seeing them succeed. So to see, two of them really share deep love with each other, it basically really pisses them off. And that's what I was trying to go for. I hope that kind of translated well.
I
get it.
would say that it did because it just seemed as though these things are just nasty things that really feed off of kind of the idea that humans shouldn't be happy. It makes them happy when it doesn't.
Oh, I'm excited to show the future chapters to you guys. I like to world build and reveal things nice and slow. A lot of authors do that. And as I reveal over time what they are and a little more about them, you'll see in the future chapters a little more details and it'll all make sense. That's what I hope to go for. Yeah.
All right. So is it aspiring writer's turn next?
Yep.
Indeed.
Oh boy, wouldn't it be a riot if Rukim were the good guys?
Haha, plot twist.
Yeah,
Bamboozle.
Balerion's got some thinking wheels turning there.
Big brain moment.
They hate humanity, so
Yeah,
I guess
that's
they
it.
are the good guys.
He's going peak Shyamalan there.
What if this whole time the perspective you're reading is the perspective of the villains? You never knew.
Yes.
Genocide humanity. It's the only way.
Well.
Yeah, I'm glad you guys liked it. All right, cool.
All right.
So, anyways, we have hit the final chapter of this particular arc of this character. She will come back later, but then next chapter is a different POV for a while. So We started with this character being on the planet of Wasin. She is rescued by the revolutionaries. She then joins the revolutionaries. She has nightmares of her experiences in Wasin. She is taught by her mentor, Will. She has killed someone with hesitation, been scolded for that hesitation, and her nightmares have changed from her experiences to Wasin to seeing her entire squad die. Now is her final chapter for like the next few months. Held before being transferred to E2 Prime, where the Soul Source is chosen as the capital planet for a sector of space and set up residence, Will motioned for her to swipe to the next image, which was of a large dark structure with countless protrusions of various sizes. The sky above light orange. That's the Executioner's Pikes, his palace. In that palace is a section where he keeps the prisoners. Could we talk about something else? Triple interrupted tentatively, looking up from the image. Will's head cocked slightly. Any reason why? It's just... She licked her lips. I'd rather not talk about what the Ascending Territory would do to me if they caught me. Will went silent, but she noted something in his expression. What? Triple, I know I say this a lot, but this isn't what the Ascending Territory would do to you. You're a triple host. You never make it to the E2 system, much less the planet. Why am I not surprised? She said exasperatedly, throwing her hands up. She let herself fall back onto the bunk, arms spread, screen on her lap. How do any host survive? How did Preeminence live with angels hunting him? Will took a seat next to her, his head turning slightly in her direction. Do you know the Source's main method for killing hosts? She shook her head. They have special nurses, those who are loyal and committed beyond a doubt, look at a child's DNA before they're even born and see if they fit the purge requirements. If they do, they inject something into the mother and the child. He shrugged. Never got to even take a breath. Triple sat up, mouth agape, as Will continued. People believe it's a natural thing for newborns to have a high chance of coming out stillborn. It's all they've ever known, so why would they question it? Thankfully, a few rare, brave individuals did, and was able to get word to the revolutionaries. And you haven't tried telling anyone else why? She asked, finally finding her voice. Sucking air through his teeth, Will's eyes grew distant. The revolutionaries tried once. Worst mistake they ever made. They managed to broadcast all they had discovered to every major system. His eyes focused on her again. What happened next was the worst retaliation the revolutionaries have ever faced. Mirage herself went to every system, wiping and altering memories en masse, making sure nobody remembered what they had heard. Only a few surviving revolutionary records allowed them to even remember what happened. And the other sources. The others finally decided to give the revolutionaries their full attention. Will shook his head sorrowfully. They had no idea how matched they were. The revolutionaries are even smaller than they are today, and far more overconfident. They never had to deal with the full might of the Ascending Territory bearing down on them. His eyes grew distant again, and almost pained. It was a slaughter. The revolutionaries didn't have nearly enough resources or strength to put up a fight. By the time the sources were finished, the revolutionaries had been reduced to a size he hadn't been in since their inception. That century of rebuilding gave them perspective. What they had built. When put to the test, Will made a swatting motion. It had been barely more than an insect to the sources, an annoying one that eventually pissed him off, but still an insect. The revolutionaries still have some of that information they had broadcasted and share it when needed, but trying to oust the source's secret isn't something they will ever do lightly again. Will looked at her face, and Triple could see him focusing on the scar that ran down it. She felt her face flush, her hand unconsciously rubbing the scars on her arms. I know it's weird to hear, considering everything you've gone through and the scars you bear, but you are lucky, Will told her. Most are not quite as fortunate as you. You mean fortunate enough to be alive? I mean fortunate enough to be alive and in a position to stay alive. Despite the very sophisticated system the sources have in place, there are plenty of holes, as evidenced by yours truly. Will wave to her. The sources and our nurses aren't everywhere, and can't always keep constant track of everyone. There are planets that only get routinely checked on a couple of years, and hosts born in places away from prying eyes, like out here in space. But that's only part of the battle. The other part is avoiding discovery, and that's the hard part. Because of the angels, Triple remembered. That's their purpose, isn't it? Will's face scrunched up. That's simplifying a tad. It is one of their responsibilities, specifically Mark, Vampire, and Cecile's, who are best suited for those assignments, being hosts themselves. But they only become a problem after you're discovered. The real trouble is that to live in the Ascending Territory, you need to be put into the registry, which requires a record of your DNA. Which is why living a normal life is impossible for me, she sighed, crossing her legs. Not even my shapeshifting could help? Pursing his lips, Will shook his head again. The strand of DNA that tells us you're a host doesn't change no matter what form you take. No one has been able to determine why. That's worth asking, I guess, Triple thought. Still don't see how this means I'm fortunate. You don't. You were hidden on a planet where you were allowed to grow to an age where your abilities would manifest fully. You didn't have to worry about the angels hunting you like Pyramid did. Nobody knows you exist to hunt, even now. And now you're with the Revolutionaries, the safest place for a host you'll ever find. You mean when you aren't deciding whether or not to force me into your breeding program? They both got quiet, and Triple became suddenly aware of the slight hum that reverberated through the ship. Will refused to look at her, his posture stiff and straight. Fingering her revolutionary armband, she mumbled, "Sorry." "It's fine," he said quietly. "You have every right to be angry." Triple squeezed her eyes shut, silently cursing herself. "Could we forget I said that?" Turning to her, he pointed at her armband. "How do you feel, being part of the Revolutionaries? Do you feel forced, being here, part of the squad?" Triple took a moment to respond before honestly saying, "Yes." Will nodded, as if he expected that answer. "Don't blame you. I would be too." "So you know how I feel?" she asked with amusement, a slight smile on her lips. "You can relate to what's happened to me?" Taking a deep breath, Will said, "You feel like any choice you had was robbed from you, and because of that, inside you seed. You hate being here, being part of this, even though you have nowhere else to go. Even when you smile, when you feel like this is where you want to be, where you're at your best, a part of you hates it because you didn't choose it. You start to hate that you're so good at it, blaming them for making you good at it." "I somewhat, yes," Triple stuttered, taken aback. "Well, take it from my experience, that feeling doesn't get any better. If anything, it will only get worse the longer you're here." Triple looked down at Will's leg. Slowly reaching over, she laid a gentle hand near his knee. "I don't hate you." Will chuckled, patting her hand. "I don't believe I said otherwise. But you will grow to. Maybe not me, but everyone else. Everyone you associate with the Revolutionaries, you'll grow to hate eventually." Easing herself closer, Triple leaned forward, forcing him to look at her. "Do you feel like that?" He gave her a sad smile. "Used to. Long time ago. How'd you get over it?" His smile slipped. "I didn't. At least, not when it mattered." Triple tried sensing his emotions, and for a moment she felt something. Regret. "What happened to you?" Before Will could answer, the ship's comm let out a sharp tone. Stiffening, he shot up and rushed out of the room, startling her as he accidentally pushed her away. Following him outside, she caught a glimpse of him dropping down to the lower level, not even bothering with the ladder. Hearing a door open behind her, Triple turned to see Carol stumbling out of her quarters, her hair disheveled and eyes hazy. She had one sleeve of her jacket worn and was trying to strap on her belt even as she was passing by. "Carol? What's happening?" "Triple?" Carol squinted at her as if she hadn't noticed her standing there before. "Good, you're ready. Go down, ask Nick for a plasma arm, and be ready for orders." She clicked her belt down and started to slip on her outer sleeve. "Carol," Triple repeated, grabbing her arm. "What is happening?" "That tone was a combat alert. Shadow Squad must have called for assistance." Carol started to smooth her hair back. "Now get down to cargo bay and prepare for combat." Triple gave her a curt nod and dropped down, Carol right behind her. Rushing to the cargo bay, Triple saw Nick and Cyril already there, both carrying plasma rifles that she was unfamiliar with. They were slightly larger than what she'd seen Nick previously use, and the muzzle was a tad wider, though still smaller than a firearm's muzzle. She didn't see Will amongst them. He was likely in the cockpit with Jeffrey and Carol. Nick looked away from his preparations and noticed her, beckoning her over. Triple approached him, nervous but standing firm. Nick dug into one of the crates and tossed a plasma rifle to her, the same kind they were carrying. Triple let out a yelp, fumbling the rifle as she caught it. Calm down, it's unloaded. Nick opened another crate and gave her a plasma pack far larger than the kind her Redan used. He loaded it into the plasma rifle for her before heading toward the medical bay. Wait, I don't know how to use this. Well, turning around, he waved her off. You'll do fine. You won't be shooting anything far off. He entered the medical bay and came out with Uriel's blade, the belt already on. How's Uriel doing? Triple asked. Stewing in frustration, but otherwise fine. He started to ground his teeth, agitation coming off him in waves. Really could use her right now, though. We'll just have to make do without her, Serial chided. We have the blade plasma arms from the raid, so we shouldn't have any problem. Nick nodded, looking distracted before doing another check on all the equipment. A few minutes later, Will entered the cargo bay. Everyone at the ready, he ordered, with a wave of his arm. Serial Nick stiffened and stood straighter, and Triple did likewise. Will took out a screen and set it on one of the crates. Tapping it, a hologram popped out of it, showing two starships right next to each other and connected at the sides. Shadow Squad's commander, Saminthia Chalice, has sent a distress signal from her squad's freighter. Mark's personal freighter is connected to their starboard airlocks, connected, and has boarded the freighter. We're going to connect to their portside airlock to evacuate Shadow Squad. The ship wasn't exactly made for boarding onto other ships, Nick commented, nodding to the circular entrance, presumably the airlock, at the left side of the cargo bay. Their ship was, so you'll have a bit of space between the entrance and the corridor, and we're only evacuating. No going into that vessel unless we order you to. We have already told them to hold position at the airlock and that we're heading in, so get into position. His coat flapped as he rolled around, heading back into the cockpit. He paused as the medical bay opened to reveal Uriel, leaning against the doorframe for support. Uriel, you should be resting. Shut up, she spat, though there was no real force behind it. My leg may be broken, but I can still use the weapon systems. Now can you give me a hand? Will considered her for a moment, and then, making a decision, put her arm over her shoulders and helped her limp to the cockpit. Well, that's one less worry, Nick commented. Daryl, I want you next to the airlock. Triple, stay in the corner there. But I can help, she protested. Was this because of her failure in the MR system? You will be. If anyone not in Shadow Squad boards, we'll need you further out. Got it? She didn't, but decided not to protest any further. Nick took that as acceptance and took his place on the other side of the airlock. The wait was only a few minutes, but it felt like hours before Will called out a warning. The ship shook a bit, and after a large thump, the airlock opened. Nick and Serial peeked over into the other ship, plasma rifles held in front of them. Triple saw their eyes widen before, after a moment's hesitation, they started firing. Even in the corner, she could hear the sizzling of the blue plasma huds hitting the walls of the ship, almost crackling. Someone dived between them into their ship, hitting the crates with a groan. She was a Phillies, with black hair instead of white, a plasma rifle clutched in one hand and a little McKee girl in the other. Nick and Serial didn't pay her any attention, so Triple ignored her. Two arms suddenly reached out of the airlock and grabbed Serial's and Nick's plasma arms, forcing their aim upwards to the ceiling. The plasma arms were then wrenched from their grasp, thrown somewhere inside Shadow Squad's ship. Serial and Nick drew their blades as someone tall in a tattered overcoat stepped into their ship, bowing under the entrance and eyeing the two. Nick thrust it at the intruder's chest while Serial sent the slash at her legs. Moving at the speed of a blur, the intruder disarmed him, grabbed him by the chest, and drew him towards the crates in 3 sharp movements. Recovering quickly, Nick opened the crate for more plasma arms while the area around Serial started to grow darker. The intruder's hands started to glow, and, lashing her arm out, the loud crackling of electricity filled the ship as 2 tendrils of lightning struck Nick and Serial. Letting out a cry of pain, they both collapsed on the floor, slight wisps of steam coming off them. Growling, Triple fired, sending a plasma bolt toward the intruder's hip. The intruder backed away from the shot, barely appearing to have moved at all. Without turning, her arm shot toward Triple and lightning lashed out at the plasma arm, making the barrel burst. Triple dropped the plasma arm in surprise, unsure if it would still work. "Get us out of here," the Phillies cried, her voice edged with panic. "But what about the rest of Shadow Squad?" Triple asked, keeping her eyes on the pale intruder. "The rest are dead," the Phillies bit out, throwing a frightened but angry glare at the tall figure. "She killed them all." The figure turned to Triple and their breath caught, the world suddenly coming to a staggering halt. Triple recognized her. Her coat was torn in several places, and Triple hadn't ever seen the weapon she attached to her back in any of the images, but her flaring red eyes, purple hair, and partial mask was unmistakable. Vampira, head of the Angels of the Executor, had boarded a Kinna Squad ship. Thoughts?
Is that it?
Oh yeah,
Yeah.
I didn't realize you were finished.
Sorry.
I thought that was a very dramatic ending.
Well, I mean, yeah, but we didn't know that it was the ending.
Yeah. It
Aw.
probably would have helped if you would have said, and that concludes chapter.
so and so.
Yeah.
Hmm.
That was good.
I thought so.
Yeah,
Very good.
I'm very
Getting
intrigued.
smashed.
Engaging conversation.
Yeah.
Ooh, that's related to Becca's comment about the words plasma rifle usually turning her off immediately. That this is something that's always bugged me about sci-fi. Plasma rifles. I mean, if it's plasma, why is it rifle? I mean, do you spin the plasma bolts?
Science.
I don't know what they have to have come up with some new form of, of like launching the stuff instead of just the usual spin it around,
Well, it's not being spun, but they're shaped fairly similar to rifles.
You know what's one thing you could do, but it might be a little late, but it's just an idea. You could invent your own terminologies. I don't know if you guys have noticed, but I'm doing that with my story. Actually, when you see more of it, for example, the Heartland, the Fort, Rukim, and these words, slain, you don't know what they mean yet because they're exclusive to the story, and stuff like that. You could invent made up, like new made up terms for these things, and then through description explain that it's a plasma rifle, but it's called something else in the story. That'd
It's
be
called a
interesting.
plasma arm normally. Rifles just
Ah.
to refer to when it's a larger gun.
It's just an idea. That's what I would do if I was writing sci-fi to make it interesting and unique. I would write the terminologies. I'd make up my own, and then justify them with the story and the characters talking about them. Make it sound like it's part of the universe.
Unfortunately, Blasters is taken. And I'm not necessarily the most creative person when it comes to names.
Hmm.
So,
Okay.
what did you all think?
I think it's interesting how you have built this world, and I like how you've created a lot of really interesting world building and are really good at slipping it all in.
Yeah. I was slightly concerned you would all forget certain things, like who the fuck the angels are, which I'm sure you've forgotten. Yes?
I did.
You're not guilty.
I'm assuming that they are peacekeepers of a sort.
They're
What
kind
chapter? Sorry. Go ahead.
They were mentioned earlier as a death squad for the sources. They were sent to do most of their more dangerous tasks.
What chapter number are you on? The one that you just presented?
This is 13.
Gotcha. I only heard 2 others, I think, so I'm missing the rest.
Yeah, I've renumbered them to make the prologue 1, and then, as you guys mentioned last time, I decided to split it. The last one, since you guys said it would be better if I divided it.
Nice.
Cool.
You know what's funny? I did the same thing. You know, when I was listening to when Wissia first introduced me to it, and how he explained that he split his chapter. Believe it or not, the chapter I just presented to you guys was all part of one, but it was really long though. So I thought, nah, I'm gonna end one with this little mini cliffhanger, and then make chapter 2 all about, you know, going into the house and meeting more characters in the family. So it's funny, we're all doing the same thing. We start off with long first chapters and then we split them.
Yeah.
Seems to be a pattern.
Ain't nothing wrong with long chapters.
Yeah.
You all remember the last battle?
I don't know how many people have read Wheel of Time in here.
Is that one of your books?
No, it's
Oh
Robert
no!
Jordan.
Oh, we wish we wrote the Wheel of Time.
Yeah.
I would very much like
I
to
wish
have
that was
kind of-
my piece of work getting adapted by Amazon Prime on and airing this November.
Yeah. Even if one of the characters
Except I don't
is
wish that
I'd
it
be
was
proud.
Amazon doing it because they're the devil.
But yeah, you know where I am. I'm still finishing the first, which I actually might be able to now finally finish because just today I finally got the book again.
Oh, yay!
Yay! So now I just have to somehow finish about Dune and the Eye of the World.
Oh boy, I do not envy you the task ahead of you.
I am not gonna be sleeping.
Yeah, I hope you don't mind, but I'm going to re-listen to it again later, and if you want, I can leave a comment, you know, commenting on more of the chapter. For some reason, listening to these live, for some reason, I zone out a lot. I don't know why. So
I can relate.
I'm
Also,
trying to
I
work
can-
on that.
I can give you the share link. Actually, I could just invite you to my server and you can just go into submissions. They're all there.
Oh no! Well, I mean, I'm a delivery driver, so sometimes with these showcases, I'll play them, you know, on my speaker while I'm delivering and pause, you know, as I do my stuff, and that's how I've listened to previous showcases. And I could just do that by listening to it like an audiobook, you know.
Yeah.
Nice. I like it.
Did it feel abrupt? Because I did start it literally in the middle of a conversation, the chapter.
A little bit.
Depends on the one that was before it and the transition between the two.
The one before it was her having a nightmare of her squad dying.
Mm.
And then we go back to Will mentoring her as usual.
Nice.
I did also literally delete the chapter and redo it today. Not today, but this week. The
Deleted
previous
the whole
one.
thing. Oh wow.
Yeah, I felt it wasn't working. So I was like, I need to read this out. I need to fix this. Did you want it to feel abrupt? Well, I wanted it to return to normal. It's kind of like, this is how life continues. This is just what's going to be happening. I didn't want it to feel jarring much. It's just more like, oh, okay, so we're turning to normal.
Yeah.
All right, let me listen to it again once it's uploaded, and I'll leave a comment on the video. How's that sound?
Sounds great.
All right. So is that me next?
Yes.
It is.
The actor. Let's hear the presentation. He is the
So-
king at this.
All right. So if you remember from last week, I had to leave off in the middle of a chapter. That is chapter 12, to lean. And today we shall finish the chapter. We begin, or we continue, with Shenna returning to her chambers, where she meets Elira, who is in a foul mood. Look at it! Elira wailed as Shenna walked through the door. Just look at it! Completely ruined! Elira was standing before her bed, glowering down at a shimmering silver gown spread out on the mattress before her. Shenna looked closer. The dress was ruined, was it? If it was, she couldn't see it. Perhaps there was something more subtle? It's beautiful, Shenna said. Is it new? Don't patronize me, you boorish little bumpkin, Elira snapped. I had a marvelous array of white dove feathers circling the collar right there, And that monstrous little creature of yours came along and ripped them all out. Sure enough, a closer look at the collar of the dress revealed a ragged hem that looked as though it had been unceremoniously pulled apart by a beak. It was exactly the sort of mischief that Athanasius would get up to. Shenna tried to hold back a laugh, only for the merriment to force its way out through her nose. "Oh, you think it's funny, do you?" Elira rounded on Shenna. "I spent almost 50 lath on this gown. I'll wager that's more money than you'll ever possess in your life. Now I have a crucial social engagement this evening, to which I shall attend looking like a plucked goose." It took almost half a minute for Shenna to recover from her laughter. As soon as she could breathe again, she made her way to her trunk and began changing out of her robes and into her dress. Shenna had just about finished when Athanasius swooped in through the window and fluttered to a perch on her outstretched hand. There was no Songberry this time, but Shenna didn't mind. Athanasius was a busy little bird, after all. "There he is!" Elira howled. "There's the villain! I know this is his doing. I just know it! He hates me. He always has." "It's not you," Shenna said, stroking the bird's head. "Ath just doesn't like people wearing feathers. And I have to say, I agree with him." "Trust you to take the side of that wretched little brute," Elira grumbled. "And what of the money I spent? Dove feathers don't come cheap, you know. Why, I'd have the feathers off that little monster's wings to replace what he stole, were they not horridly ugly." "Lord Athanasius disapproves of people clothing themselves in the stolen raiment of the feathered folk," Shenna proclaimed, a proud servant boasting of her glorious master. "And he does not suffer that his displeasure should pass unheeded by the common rabble. Is that not so, your lordship?" The violet flame twinkled in the crow's skeletal eye socket as Shenna scratched under his beak. "Oh, you are just impossible," Elira grumbled, bunching up the ruined dress and shoving it unceremoniously into her trunk before skulking out of the room. With her own dress in order, Shenna stopped by the administration offices where she collected 20 shem. Apparently she had been accruing a stipend of 2 shem per week all this time, and nobody had thought to inform her. Then again, she hadn't had a proper use for any of that money until now. With the 20 silver coins gathered onto a string, Shenna made her way to the north gate, and for the first time in months, left the magisterium grounds and headed for Taylor's Landing. Shenna's initial brisk pace petered out when she realized that she didn't actually know the way. Her journey in Elira's palanquin so long ago was of no help. Elira had kept the curtains tightly drawn. And she'd been too preoccupied to remember what route Magistress Karna had taken when she first brought Shenna to the magisterium. There were placards at the entrances of various side canals indicating their names, but without knowing which ones led to Taylor's Landing, they were of little assistance. If only Shenna could find a map of the city. It took her almost half an hour to reach Taylor's Landing. She tried to ask for directions on several occasions, but to little avail. A richly dressed gentleman continued on past without so much as a glance in her direction. An elderly woman snapped at her to just hire out a courier boat. A pair of young women mocked Shenna for her accent and told her that Taylor's Landing was back in the direction of the village from which she came. A boatman offered her a ride to Taylor's Landing, but very quickly lost interest when Shenna told him that she really just wanted directions, but thanks anyway. By the time a kindly old tavern keeper pointed out the way for her, Shenna had already wandered halfway there on her own. She did not relish the notion of asking for directions again once her business was done. Finally, Shenna marched into the same store where she had bought her dress. It looked much the same as she remembered it. The same piles of neatly folded garments and well-clothed mannequins. But the wonder of the place was gone. Where once Shenna saw glamour and elegance beyond compare, there were only assets for her to exploit, to make herself more beautiful. In any case, she hadn't come to gawk. This was a place of business, and Shenna surely had business to be about. Before a minute had passed, the attendant appeared. Darling, it has been so long. I see you're still fond of that outfit you assembled. I must say, purple and black quite agrees with your complexion. It's good to see you. Shinna gave the woman a quick, businesslike smile. Iseldra, was it? I have need of your expertise once again. One is always flattered to be asked for by name, Iseldra said, spreading her dark blue silk gown into a curtsy that probably wasn't meant as mockery. What exactly is it that I can do for you today? I've been invited to a social gathering later this evening, and I need to be... Shenna paused, carefully arranging her words to prevent any embarrassment. Well, I need to make a strong impression upon a certain individual. A strong impression, you say? Iseldra said, with a knowing twinkle in her dark brown eyes. Well, now, I may be able to arrange something like that. Good. Shenna nodded quickly and pulled out the string of coins. Now, I don't have as much money as last time, so I understand if it's not enough, but... Oh, tish-tosh, Iseldra said. We'll make a challenge of it, darling. I'll have you looking better than ever before, and for a bargain price. Now then, where shall we start? Well, Shenna hesitated. She hadn't prepared any concrete ideas for actually going about the task of improving her beauty. Just anything to distinguish herself from Talene would do. And then again, if Gareth did find Talene attractive, then perhaps... Do you have any trousers? Trousers? Iseldra repeated the word. Yes, Shenna nodded, and quickly added, women's trousers, that is, if you have any. Naturally, Iseldra nodded. We do have a modest selection of trousers tailored especially for women. Right this way. As it happened, there was more to wearing trousers than simply swapping out a bottom garment. Shenna couldn't wear her underskirt, of course, but she also had to remove her shift, leaving her with a general sensation of being underdressed. The feel of the trousers themselves was strange as well. Superficially more freeing, yet restrictive in other ways. And that was all before she could consider the changes that it made to her silhouette and figure. By the time Shenna stood before the tall glass inspecting her reflection, she had already decided that trousers weren't going to work out for her. It does take some time to adjust to the difference, Iseldra commented, sensing Shenna's reticence. I'll try something else then, Shenna said, starting to change back into her dress. What about a different blouse, perhaps? Something with subtle embroidery, perhaps? Oh, he won't notice anything like that, Iseldra said, folding the trousers again. A pity. I rather... Shenna stopped. What do you mean by he? Iseldra flashed her a devious smile. Why, the certain individual upon whom you seek to make a strong impression, of course. It is a handsome young man, isn't it? Shenna's ears began to burn. It was bad enough that Iseldra had completely seen through her attempt to hide the truth, but she chose to reveal it now, while Shenna was right in the middle of changing. The nerve of that woman! The absolute nerve! That is a monstrous accusation, and I refuse to dignify it with an answer, Shenna huffed, going back to dressing herself. Oh, relax, darling, Iseldra said. You're hardly the first young lady to get a knot in her skirt over a man. Something else, Shenna snapped. I'll try something else. What would you recommend? Why don't we try some cosmetics, Iseldra suggested. Soon, Shenna was standing before a long table at the back of the shop, covered with vials of perfumes and powders, salves and ointments, brushes and sponges, and dozens of other things she didn't have names for yet. Iseldra stood across the table from Shenna, pointing out each item in turn, the ones Shenna could afford at any rate, and explaining its function and purpose. Shenna tried to absorb the information as best she could, but there was just so much information to sift through. Which ones would you recommend? Shenna finally asked. Which ones would serve best to draw out my beauty? If anyone could reduce beauty to a simple equation, Iseldra was the woman to do it. Beauty, Iseldra muttered. Yes, beauty. She glanced over her shoulders and leaned closer. I really shouldn't be telling you this, darling, she said in a low, almost conspiratorial tone. Beauty is a lie. What? Shenna blinked. A lie? Iseldra nodded. It is a lie sold to women, and I do very much mean sold, by people like me. I'm confused. Oh, don't get me wrong now, darling, Iseldra laughed. One ought to keep oneself at least reasonably presentable, and I must admit there is a certain pleasure to be taken in chasing the will-o'-the-wisp of fashion. But at the end of all things, there is only one true source of beauty. And do you know what that is? What? Confidence, Iseldra said. Confidence is the wellspring from which all true beauty flows. Without it, all the silks and satins and fine gowns in the world would be a little better than rags upon you. But if you are truly confident in your worth as a person, then you've already made yourself more beautiful than anything I could ever do for you. Shenna looked about the store, taking in Iseldra's words. So, either none of this will help me, or I don't need any of it, she said, playfully twisting Iseldra's words. Why, in that case, why even come here? I did say I shouldn't be telling you any of this, Iseldra said, matching Shenna's mirth. Don't worry, darling. I'm sure this young man you're interested in will more than appreciate you. What if it's not enough? Shenna asked meekly. What if he doesn't see anything beyond my looks? Why, then he's not worth your trouble, darling, Iseldra laughed. I certainly wouldn't want anything to do with a man who only appreciates me for my beauty. I'd just as soon have him fall in love with a portrait of me and count myself blessed to be rid of a fool. I suppose that's true, Shenna said. Iseldra was probably right. Gareth was far too smart and wonderful to ignore her if she could just make him see her for her true worth. And if he didn't see, well, of course he would. It wasn't worth considering the alternative. Those three there, Iseldra pointed out a trio of small boxes. Base, blush, and shadow, the fundamentals of cosmetics. Everything else you see is just decoration. The price should be more than reasonable. In fact, she picked up another small case. Lip wax. Violet, of course. It really does agree with you. Wonderful color. Just as Shenna took out the string of coins, an older woman emerged from the back of the room, from a back room. Iseldra, she said in a calm, low voice, there is a beggar woman at the front of the store. Get rid of her for me, would you? Sure enough, there was a figure wandering about at the front of the store. Her garments told of neglect and hardship. Not to worry, mistress, Iseldra said. I'll take care of that issue as soon as I finalize this purchase. I just need to... Now, girl, the older woman snapped, before that wretched little vagrant tarnishes our image. Very well, mistress. Iseldra forced a smile through a sigh, and set off across the store to intercept the figure, leaving her mistress to handle Shenna's purchase. Shenna braced herself for a storm of shouting, but none came. Instead, Iseldra gently took the woman aside and struck up a civil conversation with her about what exactly she was looking for and where her price range lay. It was a tremendous improvement over the way she had treated Shenna when she first arrived in Accra. Iseldra's mistress, however, seemed less than pleased. No sooner had she counted out Shenna's change than she stormed across the sales floor and struck the poor woman upside the head with an open palm. Away with you, she bellowed. Scurry back to whatever squalid little hamlet belched you out and plague us no more. Iseldra stared in dumb shock as her mistress drove the beggar woman out the door. If you ever bring your stench in here again, I shall summon the city watch and have you bodily ejected from the premises. Once the beggar woman was gone, the older woman turned back on Iseldra. Losing your nerve, are you, girl? She snarled. Wait for me in the back office. Iseldra strode languidly toward the back of the store, passing Shenna as she made her way toward the exit. She looked like a woman being led to her execution. Such high hopes I had for that one, Shenna heard the older woman mutter. Ah, yes, thank you for patronizing our establishment. Do please call upon us again soon. Shenna left the store and never came back. There we go. I think that'll do it for today.
Man,
Very nice.
love it. Love it.
Ah, yes, of course. It is trousers, not pants. Or at
I
least
gotta-
it is when you're talking in the proper English way.
Stop telling this group of folks the secrets of make.
Damn it,
Honest-
Carl,
I-
stop
I
telling
gotta-
this
I gotta
group of
level with you.
noobs.
Honestly, I just made that up off the top of my head. Just a few cursory Wikipedia searches and just that's it. I was honestly winging it.
That's actually really, really impressive.
You know, I love I loved the switch in the conversation. The moment where she mentioned, I forget if it was boy or man. She mentions boy so casually in the conversation, and Shanna's just like, yeah, but wait, boy. And then the revelation hits, and then she starts playing with her, saying, "Oh, well, you're trying to impress a young lad, aren't you?"
Oh yes.
I love that. That was
Shanna
laughing.
is not nearly as opaque as she imagines.
That was very
herself.
that was very good. A very good character moment, revealing that the what was her name, Miss Elrich? She's a lot.
Seldra.
Miss Eldrin, right? That she was a lot smarter than than she looks, or that Shanna thought, and it was good. I liked that. I liked the whole thing. The voices you gave each character, they each had their own voice very well, and in fluctuations in the way they speak. Especially the last one, that was pretty funny. The terminology she used when kicking out the beggar girl.
Oh yes. This is actually something I don't think we've a lot of mentioned because when Iseldra last appeared in chapter 7, and I think that was a really slow showcase when I put it on there. But Iseldra was back in chapter 3. She basically threw Shenna out of this very store, and then Shenna comes back in chapter 7, the store later with money, and Iseldra tries to throw her out again, but the owner of the store says, "Look, that girl's with the Magisterium, so just don't be a bitch and just show her around the store." And Iseldra is all of a sudden very self-effacing and conciliatory, and now, having basically gone a few months off screen, it shows she's actually kind of developed into a much nicer person. Just in time to be fired for not throwing out the poor beggar woman.
I see what you did there.
So yes, poor lady. She's in for some hard times.
Yeah,
Indeed.
that was a great chapter, or end of chapter. What do you guys think? Nice.
Yeah. Yeah, definitely Carl is somehow like very, very good at writing how teenage girls work, at least based on Becca's reactions.
Clearly, he has experience with them.
Okay, I feel the need to state that I am not now, nor have I ever been a teenage girl.
That was
Something
not.
you want to admit to us, Commissar Carl.
That was not exactly my first instinct, though it did cross. my mind.
Unless I'm being interrogated by the KGB, in which case, yes, I am a teenage girl, and my parents were both teenage girls.
Well, maybe you're just a good writer in a sense. Like Quentin Tarantino, you can nail conversations and characters and how people actually talk.
Or he could have just dated a lot of teenage girls for
True.
many years
Oh,
and
I
studied
wish.
them like
I
a
very much wish.
scientist.
I am not nearly so smooth an operator as that. Although I will say, in terms of as for dialogue, the real secret to writing dialogue Talk to yourself.
Talk to yourself.
Yes. Talk to yourself in the shower, when you're walking. Like, even if people look at you the wrong way, just like put your hand up to your phone and say, no, hang on, could you give me that again? Just figure out how to run dialogue to yourself.
Okay.
Now, I've gotten so much dialogue just figured out by, yammering to myself while I'm biking to and from work. It really works.
Mm.
Is Nihilus one of those voices that you've been talking to yourself with, or is he a recent acquisition?
Who?
Nihilus. I'm talking to Becca. It's a meme that in the chat, like that Nihilus Nihilum is a figment of Becca's imagination.
Oh, I thought we were talking about Mass Effect.
I've never played it.
I already mumbled to myself a little bit too much, and my parents are starting to wonder if I'm insane, so I don't think purposely doing it is going to help.
Sanity is overrated.
Yes, but not when it's at the risk of you put in an institution.
Sanity is overrated.
You could be insane when you're finally secluded in your hidey hole.
Mm.
I don't know.
There once lived a hobbit in a hole.
I have long feared that I may at some point in my life go sane.
Go sane. Okay. The implications are strong with this one.
You act like any writer is truly sane, mate. None are. Just look at fucking George R. Martin. Seriously, friend keeps telling me about all the weird shit he added in the books that wasn't in the show, and I'm like, Jesus Christ, Martin, what the fuck are you doing? And that's not even as weird as the person who wrote fucking It.
Oh no, Stephen King was on cocaine when he wrote It. That's why it's all over the place.
Let's be clear, he wasn't always on cocaine, not for every book.
Well,
and
no,
there's
but that
weird
one
shit
he
in
was.
every book.
That one he was, and it shows.
Well,
But also, was his publisher on it?
I think the weirdest thing that Stephen King has ever written is the screenplay for Sleepwalkers. Honestly, because it makes it look relatively sane by comparison.
Man, he must have been into some really witchcraft-like stuff.
I don't know what
Balerion has a good question. Are we going to get more magic? That is something we've been. I've been starving my audience for magic pretty soon. Well, for the last few chapters. The next one probably isn't going to have very much magic per se, but luckily, the ones after that will start to get into some pretty heavy magic, and we will be seeing some of that good stuff.
Depriving your audience so that they appreciate your shit more. Nice tactic.
Always
Balerion.
keep them hungry.
Balerion, just wait till the next time I'm on a showcase and I present Chapter 3. I got you.
Oh boy.
Can you stop? Oh yeah, I knew that thought long before you, Becca.
Yeah.
I knew that long before you. I was waiting.
Yeah, I told a few people because I was just like so excited, like right after, and I didn't stalk him. I ran into him. There is a difference. One implies long strategic planning,
which you're clearly incapable of because you don't have the patience to wait a few months.
Yeah, no, not really. No.
It's like you couldn't wait for December, you couldn't wait for February, you did it in October.
Yeah. I just wanted to see the reaction, and it was just as interesting as I thought it would be. I know, like, even like I think the immediate reaction was, that is a deep fake. That is not Brandon Sanderson wishing Becca a happy birthday.
I think that was from I think that was from White. Yeah, White said deep fake.
No. It was Dr. Crow.
Was he on? I'm pretty sure, like, I remember Von Ulstra, White, and Becca being on.
it was in the chat that Mr.
Well, someone said deepfake as well, so he was walking on the treadmill. The poor man. Well, Becca, you're getting 2 presents because you have that. And then Dun's gonna. I finished a cut and sent it to Dun. He's gonna upload that soon. You'll have plenty of laughs.
Yeah.
I talked about it, and then I did it finally.
Yep. I have the file, and I will upload it.
The entire argument is just in there. It also randomly cuts off because I don't know why.
Alrighty. So the thing I'm going to be reading today is actually something from kind of an older project that I haven't done in a while, and that is the Legend of Ashkar Longtooth. It's basically a anthropomorphic fantasy animal book.
Oh,
Ooh. How about that?
Yep.
interesting.
Yeah. So I've read a little bit of it. I think I actually skipped around, but this is supposed to be the first chapter to kind of introduce you to the kind of the conflict of the world and what's going to happen. And I'll just start reading. The Iron Horde, comprised of wildcats, jackals, and caracals, waited with bated breath at the entrance of the great wildcat Khan's tent. Lord Ogatai and his 2 wildcat brothers sat on the ground at the entrance to their father's tent, waiting for the physician's declaration. Their entire people have been at war for nearly 20 years. Conquering everything that was before them. Under the leadership of the great Khan, they had ravaged across the eastern lands. Their recent victories over the Sun Kingdom of the Potamian Empire had given what had once been a group of barbarians new technology and vast wealth that Their victories could be attributed to 2 things: their tactics and their wolves. Ogatai glanced toward where the army was letting their wolves roam through the camp, growling and snarling warningly. The massive creatures were equipped with saddles and armor, though the latter was a recent addition. The wildcat hordes were able to easily outmaneuver their adversaries by riding on the backs of the wolves, each cat only barely able to reach the shoulder of their mouths. The wolf either archers were able to fire and retreat, then go on the charge with their lances once their quivers had been depleted. I do not think he will live through the night, Tenochi, the second oldest, said quietly. Probably, Ogatai, I thought, toying with his knife. Massive Kushlak, oldest of the brothers, folded his huge arms. And if father dies, what then? He asked, stroking his sword hilt. Tenochi shrugged and leaned back on the rock he was sitting against. It'll be over. We'll go back to manage what we've conquered already. Maybe divide up what has been and conquer between the 3 of us. No, Ogatai said quietly, looking toward the setting sun in the west. We must continue what our father started, the unification of all that is under the sun. How? Tenochi asked, sitting up. When father dies, how can we really motivate the troops to fight? Kushlak did not contradict his little brother. Instead, he looked at Ogatai carefully. Drawing himself up to his full height, Ogatai unsheathed his claws. Our blood runs strong with fire and steel, he howled. We were not meant for bureaucratic maunderings. We are conquerors, and we must bring the rest of the world under our heel. Besides, we cannot sustain our empire without more slaves to build and maintain our fortresses. We've taken everything else, all that remains of the lands to the west. A grin spreading across his scarred face, Kushlak nodded slowly. You speak well, little brother. He bowed his head to Ogatai, then slashed his palm. I will support you in taking the horde west. As will I. Tenochi remarked, unsheathing his claws and slashing his own palm. By steel and blood, I swear to follow you, brother. My lords, A jackal physician came out of the tent, followed by a pair of caracal assistants. Your father requires your presence. They all entered their father's quarters, Kushlak holding the tent flap for his brothers to enter before him. The great Khan lay propped up by cushions, thin fur and wilting whiskers, telling a story of battling disease that was killing him better than everything he it was killing him better than any words could convey. His body was covered with scars from dozens of fights, battles, and other encounters, the worst one being the one across his face, taking one of his eyes and scoring a massive gaping wound from forehead to jawbone. My sons, the great Khan said hoarsely, raising a feeble paw toward Ogatai. I heard your exchange outside. Despite the yammering of these vultures calling themselves doctors. What would you have us do, father? Ogatai said quietly. Shall we continue our glorious conquest, or go back and get fat on couches, munching on sherbet and sweetmeats? The ancient wildcat smiled widely. No, that is not our way. He pointed toward his horn recurve bow. Bring it to me, he said quietly. Ogatai walked to the stand and picked up the Khan's weapon. Reverently, he handed the bow to his father. Sighing wistfully as if remembering better days, the old wildcat accepted the bow, resting the weapon across his lap. I set out on this glorious conquest before you were born, Ogatai, he said quietly. I was raised on raw fish and starving deer, with only one wolf and 2 warriors. That time is ended. You, my son, will eat only the finest of foods and have no lack for warriors to do your bidding. He took up the bow and proffered it to Ogatai. Take it, Ogatai, Khan of the Iron Horde. Respectfully, Ogatai took hold of the weapon, but his father's grip on the bow did not slacken. Promise me you will not leave my mission uncompleted. His yellow-slitted eyes did not waver as he glared into Ogatai's green eyes. Promise me, my son. I will not return to the lush gardens of the Sun Palace until the world is under the sway of the Iron Horde. Ogatai swore, unsheathing his claws and slashing his wrist. By blood and steel, I swear it. With a relieved sigh, the ancient cat released his grip and leaned back on his pillows. Good. Very good, he said quietly, eyes closing. My shade will always be with you, my sons. Unleash the wrath of the underworld upon our enemies. With that one last pronouncement, the once mighty wildcat warlord breathed his last breath on earth. Ogatai looked down at the bow, then at his brothers. They knelt before him. Hail, Ogatai Khan, master of the Iron Horde, they said quietly. Ogatai nodded and motioned for his brothers to stand. Let us inform the army of our position. He dashed out of the tent, raising his father's bow above his head. The storm is not yet over, he yowled at the sky. Wildcats, jackals, and other assorted creatures comprising the horde looked up from tending to their wolves or their weapons to stare at the tall, tan-furred wildcat. I hear the sound of lightning, and it strikes in Brockwood. The cats threw back their heads and yowled in adulation. All hail Ogatai Khan, Khan of the world! All hail the Khan of the world! The jackals took up the call, and the lesser cats chanted along with their larger counterparts. The Khan of the world. Ogatai smiled as he held the bow aloft. That has a good ring to it. The wolf-riding wildcats dashed through the trees, bows out, arrows already knocked. They rode their animals masterfully, guiding the savage beast with their knees more than the reins. As they sniffed around the forest, Cheery the squirrel switched her long silver tail as she watched them from her vantage high above in the branches of a large oak tree. Slowly, she pulled back her bowstring. She kept swishing her tail, then stiffened it just as she released her shaft. A rain of arrows accompanied her own missile as it fell from the trees onto the wildcats and their mounts. Cheery reloaded and firing again, feeling where the shaft was supposed to go rather than aiming it. She knew where it was going to go. She was one with the arrow, one with the wildcat she shot. The creatures fell easily, the arrows from their longbows smashing through the overlapping plates worn by the cats. Once they were all thoroughly pincushioned, Cheery and her fellows, water voles, squirrels, some squirrels, a few otters, even a large badger, scrambled down and began salvaging their arrows from the corpses. One wolf was still alive, despite having several arrows protruding from her chest. The vicious animal nearly took Cheery's paw off before she slashed her across the throat with a stolen saber. "Well done, Cheery." Tembo, the big badger, clapped her on the shoulder. "We routed the cats, and we're sending even more troops after us." That's not how they work, Tenbo," Cheery said grimly, pulling a shaft free from a prone cat's face. "They won't let a group of slaves escape without making an example of us. Just because we've killed 3 patrols already, that just means they'll send more after us until we have an army on our tail." She replaced the arrows in the quiver, hanging from her improvised belt before raising her voice. "Take what you can. We're going to need to bury them quickly." The moles nodded and began digging rapidly while Tembo and the others dragged the fallen cats close to the gentle moles. "I thought they might soil themselves when we started carrying them up the trees," the big badger said wryly as he pulled a wolf all by himself to a quickly dug hole and hurled the beast into the grave. With near pitch-perfect accuracy, Tembo affected a quaint mole accent. "Bro, you ain't gonna drag us up in that there tree. Tain't natural, it isn't." Cheery didn't smile. Instead, she methodically helped her fellow squirrels drag their dead enemies into the improvised resting places. Even these makeshift holes in the ground were too good for the cats in Cheery's opinion. Her mouth tightened as memories of her time as a slave for the cats rose up. She'd been born into that life, so she didn't remember a time before the cats rode down from the north on their wolves, using their merciless hit-and-run tactics to devastating effect. They did not enslave all they came into contact with, only those who resisted them after they had established their dominance over the land. Cheery's parents had resisted them, and they had been forced into servitude, building the Great Wall around the Sun Empire's borders. It had been started centuries earlier, but the cats had finished the project through increased brutality. Once it was finished, Cheery and the other slaves were forced to build more and more castles to solidify the cats' rule on the land. Then, once they had sufficiently fortified, the cats moved west, smashing through the Batamian Empire, slaughtering all before them and appropriating the slaves there for their own. During a celebration of the cats' final victory over the jackals, Cheery and her friends had slipped away into the night, quickly picking up weapons from some fallen guards as they ran. For a time, they thought that they'd escaped without being noticed, and then the first patrol had come up after them. It had been small, so they'd been able to ambush them in a similar manner to this one. Then the second one came, and the third. This one was the 5th in as many weeks. Where they were going, Cheery had no idea, just that they had to get away from the cats. "You had that dream again last night, Tembo?" she asked, unceremoniously kicking a dead cat into the grave. The big badger nodded, eyes somewhat distant as he gazed toward the west. "It's the same every night for the last few days," he remarked, sounding wistful. "I think someone is showing me where I'm meant to be." "Tell me again. Maybe I can figure out something new from how you describe it." Cheery slung her bow across his shoulder, then started walking toward the setting sun. Tembo thought for a moment. "It's the same as it always is," walking along a beach toward a giant mountain, smoke billowing from a blasted-out top. He snapped his fingers. "Oh, there was something new this time. I saw another badger walking in toward me." His eyes seemed to glaze slightly. "It was magnificent, Jerry. A real warrior. Big, strong. He carried a sword taller than you." "Huh." Jerry was listening intently now. Tembo had been having this strange dream for days. At first he hadn't mentioned it, but after 3 weeks there was something that she needed to listen to. Perhaps the spirits were trying to lead them to freedom through Tembo. Did he say anything? Tembo's head bobbed enthusiastically. He did, but I can't understand it, he said, voice trailing off toward the end. Was he speaking a different language, or sure he didn't know what else there was? It was cryptic and convoluted. Tembo scrunched up his eyebrows, flexing his massive paws absently. However, he didn't say the riddle initially. He seemed to look into my soul for a few minutes. Then he nodded as if he approved of me. His name was Lord Greatbrock, the first Badger Lord of Baradastron, and that he was there to tell me where I needed to go. This was fantastic. Shuri seized her friend's paw. What did he say? She demanded eagerly. Tembo licked his lips thoughtfully, dredging up the Badger Lord's message. Your journey will take you far from here, he recited. Tell the one whose fur mirrors the moon my message, for it pertains to her just as much as it does to you. The tide of wildcats will sweep toward my mountain unchecked, unless you warn those who live there. Find the mad beast who roves the seas in search of battle, the warrior from the north aimlessly wandering the forest, running from his past, seeking death, and the long-eared messenger seeking a purpose. They each have a part to play in the war to come. The warrior to break, the mad beast to lead, and the messenger to pay the price for victory. Seek the river riders. They will take you to a safe place where you will find two of the ones who must fight. Always toward the sun, always toward the sun. Do not deviate for even a day. Keep journeying on a straight path toward the setting sun. Tembo shivered. Then he put his paw on my shoulder, and I woke up. Well, that's pretty straightforward. At least the end is. Shuri glanced toward the setting sun. Wish we could zigzag a bit, but at least we have the moles to cover our tracks as we go. Tembo nodded and looked back over his shoulder. Should be a few days before we have another search party after us. We should be able to cover quite a bit of ground in that time. All right, Striped Dog. Shuri's mouth quirked slightly in the closest thing to a smile she could approximate. Let's move. Tembo grinned broadly. How was he able to smile after all he's been through? You'll have to run to keep up, Tree Mouse, he quipped back. And that'll conclude this for the week.
What
Nice.
the fuck was that accent supposed to be?
Burroy, it be
one?
in a quaint molar accent. That would it be? It's my homage to the old rebel novelers. It be, and no shade be casting upon it. Thank you very much.
Hey, you have a license for that murder of an accent?
Do that be your impression of an Ilianer accent? I, me aged grandmother, can do a better accent than that, I tell you.
No, it be no.
You do stretch your neck on the Edsman's block, you do.
No, I bain't be doing no accenters from Ilianer.
You got a
What is
license for that accent?
I do like the
Also,
character.
another thing at the very beginning, they say we're not meant for bureaucratic work. Well, why not? What's wrong with bureaucratic work? I mean, that's the stuff that builds empires, really. Conquering is just the noise that happens in the background of history. It is bureaucracy that builds the great states and great empires and keeps them running.
And collapses them.
Eventually,
Oh, yes.
yes. Once they stagnate, once the rich people start hoarding all the money.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
As I can't remember where I saw this, but it's about the dinosaurs. The dinosaurs did not rule the earth. They were just alive. Okay, stop crediting them with bureaucratic skills that they almost certainly did not have.
Becca, let me make this simple for you. He is not intending to do any accent. He's just doing a funny voice. The more you think about it, the more pain you will have in your life.
Yeah, seriously, I'm pretty good with accents, and even I cannot tell the difference between Cornwall and Northumberland. I fancy I can do Irish fair enough, but I've watched enough Father Ted to let that sort of one sink in. If you understand where I'm coming from, so. But Cornwall and Northumberland, I could not, for the life of me, I could not do that with a gun to my head.
Well, now I'm giving you advice on how to do less pain.
Yeah.
Also, you got a license for being stabbed.
They're opposite ends. Becca's dying.
Alas, my yank is showing.
No.
You got a license for that carrot
I'm
there.
tragically, irreparably, uncurably American in this regard.
Okay, Cornwall is the pirate.
See, I always thought that the pirate accent was just something they made up for films. Yeah.
That or Arnold Schwarzenegger.
North is that's north. Is that related to Yorkshire? You know, the Sean Bean accent, which is it's actually a champion if you can actually get it. Well, it's relatively easy. Not so much to if it's not so much an imitation of the accent, but an imitation of the person with the accent.
Alrighty.
Nice.
Any like other thoughts on it? Like this is kind of the establishment of the villains and one of the protagonist groups.
It's was that a first chapter?
Yes.
Okay, it was it was a lot that came out that comes up all at once. I don't know if that's your intention. A whole lot of dialogue and a whole lot of backstory. It feels like something you'd read maybe in a chapter 2 or 3. I definitely liked the characters and I liked the voices you gave them. And like what I like to do, give each character its their own personality and voice. I don't want every character to sound like one. Don't want them to sound like the author, right? So I like the way you did that, where you give them all their unique speech patterns. Yeah, but through the first lines, it was very right off the bat, like information, through dialogue, and I was like, okay, this is interesting. Yeah, what do you guys think?
Yeah, I think I might shift this to being a chapter 2. I was originally like not having this as chapter 1, but the thing is, chapter 1 kind of didn't really establish. Chapter 1 was kind of just an introduction, which I was originally a Wolverine helping a hare who is about to get waylaid by footpads heads in the forest, and wasn't necessarily like setting up like good tension, but I guess I could shift it around. And since I'm not partial to the ordering, I think that actually has some merit. Thank you for bringing that up.
Yeah, I would have to re-listen to the opening line again and see, like, just give it another listen, see how smooth or how quick it is. The thing about opening chapters is they're extremely difficult, because that is the most important of the entire book, and it's basically your sales pitch. And I'm really glad that Tarek was here for my first one, because I wanted, his brutality to roast me if there's anything wrong.
Admittedly, this is not really like the first chapter. There's a prologue before it that I think I've read a little bit ago, and it kind of is basically just like a framing device, really, where it's just an old Wolverine telling the story about it, how he got of the sword on his mantelpiece, and that's kind of the framing device.
I see. Bit of a How I Met the Sword, like a How I Met Your Mother.
Yeah, but I'm not going to go on for several hundred books.
Or leave the pineapple and explain.
Yeah, that
Nice.
I haven't seen. I've seen several episodes of that show, and I know how it ends, and I can understand a lot of people like reacting the same way that the kids did. With what? That's the ending? That's it. Why have we been here for years? So at least they're self-aware to a certain extent.
Yeah.
any other thoughts, or are we gonna conclude it there?
I'm happy.
Cool.
I'm happy where it is.
I'd say it was pretty darn good.
Thank you. Yeah, I'm trying to figure out what I want to do for my December release, since I just barely finished my November release, and I
Mhm.
want to at least like get like somewhere around 3 to 5 books a year, and with if I get another one finished by December, I'll at least have had 4.5 ish.
Ooh, this man's grinding. He's on it.
I'm trying. I've released 2 this
That's
year.
a goal, I tell you.
Yeah.
I'm
Before
a
we
slow writer.
leave, I do have one more question.
Go for it.
I just wanted to make sure we're. I'm gonna go back to mine, but I didn't want to interrupt from yours. Is there anything anyone would like to say about what Dunn read? Nope. Okay, cool.
Well, that was the question from a couple seconds ago of like,
Yeah,
any thoughts?
I just wanted to make sure, if there was any more. I meant to ask this earlier, but I forgot. Last week when I presented my opening chapter, you guys seemed to like it, but I also noticed that one of the only criticisms you guys had was not enough world building, which I definitely took into account. I was like, okay, this is good. I want to hear it from the reader's perspective if it's enough or too much, right? You don't want it to be boring walls of text, but you don't want it to be too little where you don't have the slightest clue what the scene looks like. So, my question is, now that I've presented chapter 2, which I had the whole scene with Nathan on the railing, just looking at the city and the fort, do you think I should add a little bit more world building in chapter 1, the opening chapter? Or what do you think of it so far now with both in context?
I think that for like general readers, like the first chapter or 2 should be character focused with enough detail that you kind of get a picture of what's the scene looks like.
Just enough to
I
let us
agree.
know what's going on.
I
Or just
agree.
a clue of what's going on.
Yeah.
You two, Dunn and Carl, when you were there for the first one, how did I do in that sense with the opening chapter introducing Nathan and Dan?
I would have to re-listen.
I'd have to go with. I'd have to listen to that again too. That's
I could
so long ago. I don't remember.
I do have a document, one that I sent to Wissia and a few close people, a Google document of the first chapter with the ability to comment over it. If where can I share that in the Discord?
I think it's Beta Reader Colin Meetup. Let me. It's either, I think I'm gonna turn this into.
You got a lot of channels up in here. I'm scrolling.
Right here. There. There we go.
Story sharing. Excellent. Okay.
Yep.
Yeah, I'll share that document there if you guys would like to read it, because sometimes hearing it is a little different than reading. Sometimes it's good to read the text yourself of the first chapter, and you guys feel free to comment all over the Google Doc, anything you want. And if you want to, watch the stream again, number 65, I think it was. I believe I was the second person to go.
Yeah.
Mhm.
All right, cool. Yeah, I was just wondering that.
Yeah, I definitely think that this the voices in the head are very interesting, and that was the main thing I gathered. A couple of like odd word choices, but I can't remember them specifically. They were kind of like very like intermittent, like 3 to 4, but I can't remember specifics. Like if I have a doc in front of me, it's easier for me to like say, okay, that's a bit of an odd word choice, but I'll try to comment sometime next week. I know that over the next few months I'm going to be editing a 115,000 word document for release in a little under a month.
November 26th.
Yep.
Excellent. Yeah, I'm grateful that you're mentioning weird word choices because, I want to know. I want to know everyone's opinions on that, and any constructive criticism to help figure out what could be wrong and what could be changed to make things even better. And yeah, I've definitely noticed that myself when writing. I'm like, I'm gonna change this word. This is a little weird. So yeah, that one needed a little bit more editing. I noticed when I was reading. I was like, oh wow, this is I didn't edit this one enough. Chapter 2, I mean. But yeah, I'll share chapter 1 in that channel, and feel free to, roast it, obliterate it, do all of that.
So, I have. Thank you for teaching me a new word, Balerion. I thought that was a typo initially, but picayune is an actual word. It means petty/worthless.
Oh,
Being here just reminded me that yesterday I had a writing workshop, and I've been to 3, including this one, really, from what I can tell. And you're like, I want negative criticism to improve. And I'm remembering yesterday, the teacher literally said, please don't, because that's less helpful than positive. And I'm just like, the fuck?
no, I mean it's like working out, bro. You can't gain muscles without putting your muscles through serious pain. And my personal feelings do not matter. I want you guys, if you notice something seriously wrong, to roast the crap out of my story, because even though it might hurt the feelings, for a moment, later on, me being the person receiving that criticism will go, okay, cool, and then I'll consider what everyone said and look back into it and change it and make it even better than it was. That's the goal. That's the whole reason I'm here, to make
And
the
Yeah.
best of what it can be.
Okay. Yeah, and honestly, like the skill of writing is basically the art of communicating information to the audience, and just sometimes the information is in your head, but it doesn't quite translate to the page.
Exactly.
And if it doesn't, it helps when somebody tells you, "Hey, this bit of information I didn't quite understand," and that's usually like a lot easier to like kind of come back from. It's just like, oh, okay, I need to explain this either a little bit more thoroughly, or maybe this information isn't terribly necessary at this point. Maybe I can put it in later, or some other like choice. It's immensely fluid. It's all about like trying to take how other people react to your story and trying to ensure that you've constructed it in a way that will convey what is in your head to the audience on the page.
Yeah. Good stuff. Good stuff.
We're getting close to your limit, aren't we, Dunn? You said a hard limit of three MST.
Yep. So this worked out really well. I'm very happy that this has turned out well. I'm very excited to see more of. I'm excited to see most of these books published. I don't know, like what's going to be the publication thing for the stuff that I'm going to be writing in the next few months. I've got a few books that are like close, but I know they're like the summer. I know like November is going to be editing and writing a little bit, and then probably by December 31st, I will have something, since I've been looking around in my manuscripts and I think I found something. But we'll call it good there. See you later.